Hey, Countdown. This is Retro Ray. We're back again. And we got Nasser today again. Nasser, you want to
What's
say hi?
going on? How are y'all doing,
Hey.
everybody?
Okay. I'm nervous for today. You're nervous for today. Who do we got on today, Nasser?
We've got the legend, the icon, Gerry Conway.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys don't know, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of you that don't know everything he's worked on. Batman,
Yeah.
the animated series, Transformers, My Little Pony, Dino Riders, um, Punisher, Spiderman, Firestorm. But I'm gonna read off what the ones I know for DC. I mean
hmm
Marvel, and then Nasser's gonna read off for DC. Of course, I read off Punisher. Of course, he killed off Gwen Stacy as well.
hmm
Which that was he talks about it in other interviews of why he ended up doing it.
Well, we'll
But
ask him
then
about it. I think it was the artist that killed off Gwen, but we'll see.
okay, and then I mean the list goes on of what he worked on. Nasher, what is it? What else did he work on that's going to lead up to something that's coming later in 2026?
Well, yeah, like you said, as far as DC characters, I mean, Jason Todd, Killer Croc, Firestorm, Killer Frost, Vixen, Power Girl, Count Vertigo, Cheetah. Like, we could just go on and on with all of the characters that he's created for Marvel and DC.
Yeah, no, definitely. But you know what? Let's not wait any long. Oh, whoa! What we do before we get ahead? Let's give a quick shout out to Dragons Lair Alamo Ranch before I forget. I'm getting too anxious. Quick shout out to Dragon Lair. You know, if you want to get graphic novels, comics, you want to go here. You want to do gaming, Warhammer 40K, um, Magic. This is where you want to go. And then, of course, we got to give a shout out to Nasser Show.
Yeah, thanks so much. As you can see there, our fourth annual Comic Art San Antonio is going to be happening November 15th. We're going to be at the Red Oak Ballroom. If you know where the Alamo Draft House is, right at 410 in Blanco, we're right under the Alamo Draft House there. So we've got a great guest list this year. We've got Josh Trujillo coming, Cully Hamner, Mike Norton, Pablo Villalobos, just on and on the guest list. I actually have one more guest to announce. So by the time this episode comes out, you'll probably already have heard about this guest. So we've got writer Evan Narcisse coming out, and his Batman Beyond and Static miniseries will be coming out that Wednesday right before Casa.
Sweet. Alrighty, let's get the legend into the room.
How you doing,
Sir,
Hi
sir?
there, guys. Hello.
It's a
Hello,
pleasure.
San Antonio.
Yeah, have you ever been to San Antonio?
I have actually. There was a convention there a few years ago, which I attended, and I did the tourist thing. I went to the Alamo,
Yeah, yeah.
did the usual stuff. Um, it was a very welcoming place.
Awesome. Yeah. Did you get to have some Mexican food? Are you a fan of spicy or Mexican?
I did. I don't eat much of it today.
Yeah.
It's a little too spicy for me,
Yeah.
but I really, I mean, I love the food, so you know, no complaints there.
All right.
so the first question I'm going to ask, Punisher. You co-created him. What made you all come up with this character? You've mentioned it before. You had a you had some they drew him in his black suit with the skull on his chest, and he was gonna be a one-off. But y'all decided that no, we needed to keep him on. Um,
Yeah.
how did it come up? I mean, whose idea was it to?
Well, the he was a necessary creation. Um, when Stan pushed us to revive Gwen Stacy, uh, I had to create a whole backstory and create a situation where she would be cloned, which meant that I had to create a villain that was capable of cloning her, which is the Jackal. Uh, and in order to introduce the Jackal, which is what I did in that issue, I felt it was necessary to give him a henchman that would be significant enough that you'd feel that the Jackal was important because he would have a henchman. That was the initial impetus. And then as we developed that character, Um, we first had, I did a very rough sketch of a black suited, um, skull based, skull in the chest guy, which was really not much. And then John took that and created the Punisher that we remember. Not the current one, but the uh, uh, go-go boots version of the Punisher. Um, and that then Stan came up with the name because we thought that the original name, the assassin, just because of how cool he looked, um, wasn't going to do it. And then as I wrote the character, um, I felt that there was some possibilities for depth there. He's an anti-hero, a guy who's fighting corruption, fighting criminals, uh, but is tricked into fighting Spider-Man. And there's he's not a black and white, even though he has a costume that's black and white. He's not an entirely black and white character. So I thought it was interesting. And the fans thought so too. We got a lot of letters. And we had already, I think, decided to bring him back um, as a full-on villain for Spider-Man. And that was, I think, what was the issue in the 130s when we did the Return of the Punisher, something like that. And then we brought him back into the giant size Spider-Man. And the fan reaction to all of this was really positive, and the sales were good. So there was an impetus when I was working on the book to use him wherever I could. Um, and that's the backstory.
I heard you mention, Jerry, that you did the sketch for it. So before your career took off as a writer, was there initial you wanting to be an artist?
Well, I couldn't, as that sketch would have shown, uh, because I really didn't have what it took. But I did feel I could visualize some of the characters that I was creating. Do a little sketch that would show the artist would do had in mind. But I knew early on that I was not going to be an artist. Although I kept trying, one of my Fantastic Fours, I actually sketched out the issue panel by panel and drew my little
Wow.
figures. And John Buscema fixed it. To his credit, he took what I did and made it look like an actual comic book. I was trying to imitate Jim Shooter, because he was doing the same thing at that earlier in that time.
Yeah. And I mean, you and Jim, you both got your start so early in the business.
Yeah.
So were you a kid who in class you were always doodling and always coming up with stories?
I was doodling a lot. I made my own comic books, but it became pretty clear that my strengths were in writing.
Mhm.
So I just took to it, and that was where I was comfortable. And I promoted myself as a writer. I think people at DC, where I initially started, were under the impression I was a lot older than I was because I was presented as older.
Oh, okay.
My first wife, when we were dating, told me, told me later that when we were dating, she thought I was in my 20s, and I was 19.
You were
So,
very mature
you
for
know,
your age. Very.
yeah, well, we can debate that. I think one of the reasons that my stuff resonated with readers was that it was emotionally driven by my hormones, my teenage hormones. They could relate to my writing because it was emotional,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
um, in a way that other writers weren't.
yeah.
Um, so that's what I mean. That's where I landed, and I was happy to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and mentioning that you were a teenager, I've heard you talk about how you and Roy and that kind of that crop of writers, y'all were the first ones that decided we want to work in comics. So once that pops into your head, how the heck do you go about trying to get into the industry?
Well, in my case, DC Comics was offering a uh, tour of their offices during the summer, and every Thursday at 2 o'clock. I remember this because it was so vital to me. Um, and when I went on the first tour, I saw these two kids, I mean, young adults, uh, who seemed to know their way around and actually broke off from the tour and visited the different offices of the editors, talked to them. Uh, and I was like, what is the deal with them? Somebody told me, oh, that's Marvin Lynn. They come on every tour and they pitch story ideas to the editors. So I started coming on every tour. I eventually got bold enough to ask the tour guide if there was anything I could do around the office
Wow.
as like an intern. So he said, "Sure, I can't pay you," you know, and yeah, I was great. That was great. And he set me up on the art chopping machine, which was terrible because my job was basically cutting up the art so it could be disposed of.
Oh
We're talking
man.
about original art. Uh,
Wow.
Murphy Anderson was a perennial artist at that uh, office. And he would come in every day working in the office doing art. And I would come in and cut up his art after it was printed. And
Oh.
I was like, hey, you okay with this? I mean, that just felt terrible. Um, then eventually, over that, when school started, I started coming in uh, every week and pitched to the different editors, uh, some of whom were receptive, some of whom were not. Uh, Eventually, an editor named George Cashton, who was the editor for books like uh, Black Hawks and uh, the, the Hawkman and Adam book, he took over from Julie Schwartz and various other books. I pitched a Hawkman story to him, and he was receptive. And then I called him after school one day to see if he had managed to read my outline, and he said, "Well, there's going to be some changes around here, and I'm not going to be an editor anymore. Uh, so I will pass you on to the new editor, who was Dick Chiarotano."
Oh wow.
And yeah, I came over to Dick. I started pitching stories to him, and he was generous with his time. And over a period of several months, I was seen there perennially every week, coming in to his office, which he shared with an editor named Bert Poltanoff. Uh, and Dick and Joe Orlando and Murray all shared the same office. And Dick and Joe were people who were hired by the new editor in chief, Carmine Infantino. Uh, and I believe Murray was worried about his job and wanted to get some of that new blood that Joe and Dick were bringing in. And so he asked me if I wanted to pitch a story to him for Weird Adventures, or one of those suspense magazines. And I
Mhm.
said, sure. I was happy to do that. And that was the summer, the following summer. And I worked with Murray for the entire summer, rewriting a 3-page weird suspense story
Yeah.
over and over and over again, with Murray changing a word, changing a paragraph here, just a lot. And finally, he got tired of it, I guess. And he asked me, so what's your page rate? And I said, I don't know. And he says, you don't know? I said, yeah, I've never sold a story before. And he went white as he realized he had just bought that story from an unknown writer. And after that, surprisingly, Dick started having me writing stories for Witching Hour and Tales, House of Secrets, and
Wow.
that propelled me to my next uh, move into writing. So it's a convoluted story and it's pretty weird, and you
Well,
couldn't do that today.
yeah, I was gonna say, just imagine trying to break off from the tour today. You're getting escorted out of the
Oh no,
building.
you'd be shot.
Yeah.
I don't know that they have a tour anymore. So
Yeah, that's true. Now they're in California now, right? The DC offices so
yes, they are, and they
yeah.
have wonderful offices that really would benefit from a tour.
Hmm.
I hope I hope they are doing one.
Yeah, I've seen the
But
pictures. They've got really cool statues and memorabilia and stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah. But
one thing I've always
no,
heard,
that wouldn't let a young person wander
yeah,
off into the
yeah.
editorial office. So,
One story I've always heard, Jerry, I've heard it a few different times, is that when people, I don't know if it was you or Roy or maybe somebody else, when y'all would have to cut the art, y'all would cut parts along the gutters and stuff so you wouldn't ruin the art. And that
yeah,
way later on, maybe you could save it. Is that true?
splice it together. Well, yes. I mean, I cut the art like if you had a 6-panel page, I would cut the first 2 panels down off by themselves, and then the second 2 panels down by themselves, and then the third panel. Uh, uh, but I don't think that there was any realistic hope that they would be spliced together.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Um,
Did you ever get to go by the dumpster and go pick up some of those or anything?
I wasn't adventurous enough to do that.
Uh,
Um, it's just such a shame. And, and Julie used
Wow.
to give Julie used to give when he was on, he would come out of his office for the tour, and he would ask questions of the kids who were going there, and he would pick at random one of the kids and give them a full art of an issue. Uh, just
Wow.
hand it over to him. Here, have this. You know,
there you go.
he did that with a friend of mine who got a full issue of Green Lantern. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I don't know who else got what, but it was that was Julie doing his best to preserve things, I guess.
Yeah.
But again, it was valueless to the company.
Yeah.
Um, it
Yeah.
was
No one knew that it was going to go up in value years later.
oh, I mean, I God. Eventually, Marv got an assistant editor job at DC. This is uh, in the late '60s, I think, and he was in charge of uh, putting the uh, original art uh, in what amounted to the dumpster, and
Oh my
he
God.
liberated a lot of that art. Um, to his credit, he didn't take any money for it. I mean, there were
Mm.
people selling art who didn't own it, uh, but yeah, that's what he did. The same thing at Marvel. people, snuck out the art.
Man.
That's how you have full issues of the Hulk floating around, for example.
Well, at least some of that
Yeah.
survived because, they've been able
Yeah.
to do some beautiful, those big artist edition books.
Yes.
I've got a Ross Andrew one, I've got a Gil Kane one, like, and I'm sure all
Yeah.
of that stuff was probably saved by someone.
Well, yeah, they artists were given back the art, starting with I believe Roy, and then certainly under Shooter, they were returned. The art was returned. Um, yeah, so uh, at that point, uh, they were apportioning it out. So, like, the pencil artist got the first pick, and he would get like uh, 10 pages. Then the inker would get like 8 pages. And then the writer would get like 2 pages. And the writer got the heavy dialogue pages, and the inker got not bad pages,
Yeah.
and the artist got the good stuff. Um, and I believe that those restored editions that you're talking about were put together uh, by the compilation of those various art portfolios,
Yeah.
um, by people who paid for those, because by that point it became worthy, it
Hmm.
became financially worthwhile, not like it is to now,
Yeah.
because it's like, whoa. um, yeah, I can't imagine,
Yeah.
the value of this stuff now. But back then, it was useless to the publishers, but they didn't want anybody else getting it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How is it now that people come up to you and say that either you inspired them to become a writer or you impacted their life in some form or fashion? As for me, you know, the stories you wrote and the things you did, I was able to bring my two worlds together, which was basketball and comics. I was able to work on a cover, and this is with San Antonio's Tim Duncan. We did this cover for the store I used to work at.
Ah,
And Tim Duncan owned a body shop car where they fix cars and modify cars. So they actually bought the car to life. We got Tim on the cover. We had Mike Choi do the artwork. And then I have a photo here with Mike Choi and Tim Duncan where he's giving him the original art.
oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, so Tim Duncan is a huge Punisher fan, and I knew this, and I, reached out to, his store, and they said, "Hey, I have a crazy idea. What if, we were to be able to do this, and y'all made a car?" Which they did made the car, and I'm gonna pull this up. You're gonna love this because it's Bernthal in front of the car. Um, and he's giving the thumbs up. This is right when he's got the role as the Punisher.
That is so cool.
And yeah, and you writing this stuff, inspired me. And Kevin Smith he really helped me step outside my box to, at that time, quit my regular job and go work at a comic book store full time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and to bring the two worlds together. But that's not the only cover I did. I liked Punisher so much that when you know Marvel got the rights back for Star Wars, they're like, "Hey, we're gonna do it. Everyone's gonna do a variant cover for all the stores, a number one for Star Wars." So my boss approaches me and says, "Hey, you have any ideas?" And I'm like, "Well, Punisher came out in 1970, around 1976, first appearance. I go, Star Wars was around
74.
that same time, 74, and then Star Wars came out a little bit after that. I was like, what if we were to bring the two together? Because Han Solo, Boba Fett, and I was able to work and come up with that cover.
Oh, you're the one. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen
So
that cover.
yes, this is one of my favorite covers I got to come up with, and to see it brought to life was pre Mandalorian, everything like that, and but you, you know, being a writer and everyone in the industry, this is why me and Nasser are doing what we're doing, is because without you legends, you know, creating all these characters, I mean, we wouldn't be seeing him in the TV. We wouldn't be seeing him in the movies, you know. And I want people to know who you are because I mean, you worked on our cartoon series like Transformers, you know, and stuff like that. And a lot of people at that time, when we're young, we don't know this. We're just watching cartoons and reading comics. We didn't know who the people behind the scenes were. But now this is something that me and Nasser really admire. And Nasser puts on his own show, and he brings artists that he loves and art and writers as well. And same thing, he's working towards, and you have the same belief as well, where we need to get back to where we bring the younger generations in and, you know, cater to those younger kids where they show what we were getting back then, like showing like the what's good and not to do the bad things and what's that, and in the, you know, and go back to the roots where we used to buy them at newsstands and, you know, convenience stores where we used to pick up comics.
Yeah,
And I know at one point they did Walmart and stuff like that, but that's not the same thing. But you have the same belief as Nasser, and that's something I feel we need to bring the kids back in, the younger generation.
Yeah, our
yeah,
show, Jerry, is
absolutely.
nothing but comic book writers and artists. We don't have any Funko Pops, no wrestlers, none of that stuff. But
That's good.
kind of building on what Ray's talking about, do you ever get a chance to just kind of reflect and be like, damn, I'm pretty good at this. I've done some stuff.
Well, I'm really gratified when I go to conventions and people come up to me and say, that I really affected their lives, or they have fond memories of reading my stuff as a kid. Uh, and these are people who are in their 50s, so it's both daunting and encouraging. And then the really old ones are my age, so because they were reading them when they were a kid. I
Yeah.
was writing them when I was a kid. Um, so it means a lot. I mean, it's very gratifying. Um, I'm grateful for them. It's totally unexpected. Um, I
Are you able to fathom like your place in history, or is that just too big?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know I I honestly don't know what kind of impact long term I will have. Uh, it's fickle. Fame is fickle. Legacy is fickle. Um, I would like, to be recognized uh, as someone who contributed quite a bit to uh, the comic story, the story that we're telling.
Yeah.
I think to address one of your uh, concerns about how to bring kids back into reading comics. Uh, the first thing we need to do, not that we will, is make the comics under $1. Uh, Find a way, cheapen the paper, put them out on newsprint. I mean, whatever you need to do to get that comic book into the hands of a kid with limited money, who can then buy 5 or 6 comics,
Yeah.
who can go into this to the comic book store or the general store. I mean, the cough at what Walmart, uh, convenience stores. Just get the books into their hands. They
Mhm.
can't do it. They can't. I mean, $5.99 for a comic book.
Yeah.
Uh, $4.99. That's better. Um, that's not going to do it. I mean, if you're gonna, I mean, think it's like a circular function. Uh, you raise the quality of the art, so you have to print it on better paper. Because you're printing it on better paper, you have to charge more. Because you have to charge more because you're selling fewer copies into a market that can't buy a $5.99 comic book, which is
Yeah.
primarily the comic book store market, which
Mhm.
most parents don't take their kids to,
Yeah.
which, it's a circular deal. Um,
And I've heard you talk
I would
about how your idea about refreshing these characters completely brand new, every 5 to 7
absolutely,
years,
yeah, yeah. That it's reboot reboot the company
Mhm.
every 5 years.
Yeah.
Come out with not an entirely new version of the characters. You didn't have to do that with Superman or Batman, but fresh takes.
Mhm.
Completely fresh take. Um, Maybe publish the cheap paper edition a month after you publish the pricey edition.
Mhm.
Uh, make it available to markets other than the comic book store,
Yeah.
or make it available to the comic book stores at a cheaper price and say, hey, kid, you want to buy a comic? Here's one for 99 cents. You know, they're going to buy that comic. I mean,
Yeah.
they can afford to buy it. Or if not, their parent will be happy to buy it for $1.
Yeah.
Um, they're not going to buy it for $4.99 or $5.99 or whatever the hell they're selling it for now. And then reboot the comic book storyline.
Mhm.
Um, don't fake it by, doing a new 52 or a rebirth or,
Yeah.
the Marvel universe. Go full on, be
Mhm.
brave, you
Yeah.
know, stop publishing for 3 months. Uh, they're both owned by companies that certainly can afford to
Yeah.
just let the companies rest for 3 months.
Yeah.
Uh, I-
And I think what we're
but they're
seeing
heading
with
in,
those compact editions that DC's doing for 9.99, those are flying off
yes,
shelves.
Yeah.
And I
yeah,
wish we could get original material in that format and that price point.
yeah. Well, it becomes hard because they have to pay the artists and writers
Mhm.
going rates. Uh, and that's very difficult.
Mhm.
We do have competition within the fields with the
Yeah.
artists and writers. Uh, I mean, with the indies uh, around, there's always another path for a
Mhm.
talented artist to say,
Yeah.
"Screw you."
Yeah.
You can't get an artist for $100 a page anymore.
Yeah.
That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you have to reduce costs somehow, and paper costs are the way to go.
Mhm.
Um, that's my view. I
Yeah.
don't know enough about the publishing business to know whether that would work or how to manage that.
Yeah.
Uh, you can. I I am I convinced that you could do like uh, a high end, uh, high reproduction issue at 4.99 or 5.99 a month or 2 months ahead of a cheap edition uh, for $1. And then maybe 3 months or 4 months later, whenever your current storyline is over, publish that as a 9.99 book.
Yeah.
Don't publish it as a 11.99 or 14.99 book. I mean, that's just not doable for these kids.
Yeah.
Publish it as 99.
Yeah.
Um, Broaden your audience.
Yeah. And you were talking about indie, Jerry. That popped into my head. Have you ever thought about doing any kind of creator-owned stuff or?
Well, here's the problem. I love writing pre-existing characters. I just love it. Um, I'm still a fanboy at heart,
Mhm.
and I have stories to tell within that framework.
Ah, okay.
Um, so I don't have any ideas that I believe are worthy of an image comic,
Mhm.
for example. I mean, I'm envious of people like Tom King, Scott Schneider.
Wow.
Um, those guys. Those guys. leave me in awe because they can come up with some tremendous ideas that I would never have thought of. I mean, they say it's because uh, they're liberated from the character factory. Um, but I think it goes beyond that. I think they've been raised within the context of image. That's been around now for what, 20 years?
30
So
now.
30, so they have a forerunners that they can look at.
Mm-hmm.
They can say, oh, I want to do something like he did.
Yeah.
I see what he did there. Um, it's a possibility for me. And then the trend, becomes work on a creator owned, a character owned uh, book for a year or 2 years. Get your footing in the fandom. Um, become a credible creator, and then do your indie project.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's where the most interesting stuff is being done. That's the books I read. I haven't read a Marvel or DC book in 5 or 10 years.
That's
I
what I was going
wait
to ask
until they.
you. You
Yeah,
seemed familiar with, current writers, so you are still reading current things, huh?
yeah, I am. I'm
Awesome.
reading current writers who I admire. I I will always read Batman. I just love. I love the work that people like Tom King and Scott Schneider and James Tillon do with that character. Uh, but I wait until there are volumes of their work before I start reading.
Yeah.
Um, because it's just not interesting. I'm not willing to buy them for what I consider overpriced comic. Uh,
Yeah.
a volume, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You're talking about 6 issues or 12 issues. Something that can be read and enjoyed and is meant to be read at that pace.
Yeah.
True.
Um,
And it definitely
they're
makes more
writing.
sense for people who aren't familiar with comics. Because my wife is a avid reader. You can see all these sci-fi books and Brandon Sanderson and stuff like that. Those are all hers. And, she's been introduced to more comics because of me. But she would rather I just hand her a trade instead of I hand her an issue. Because then she's like, okay, where's the
Oh
next
yeah.
one? And I'm like, you have to wait 30 days. So,
No, no, no.
yeah.
Well, it's like this is a person. I mean, we're raising generations of kids who binge video,
Yeah.
Hmm.
binge streaming, and when the occasional show is a weekly show, it feels weird. Like
Yeah.
the fact that Peacemaker came out weekly, just yeah. It's not out yet. It's not out. Come on, when does it come out? You know,
Yeah. And I'm guilty of that too. I haven't watched any of it, so I could binge it all at the end.
yeah, yeah. We're all binge watching caught on with Netflix, obviously,
Hmm.
and mostly because they were going back to uh, seasons of television that weren't intended to be binged.
Hmm.
When they first started out, they didn't have access
Yeah.
to new material, so they could run shows like 24,
Yeah.
which purported to be bingeable, but I only got into 24 when it was available on DVD.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
I knew that I could take the next episode right away.
Yeah.
I remember one night I watched 4 episodes, 5 episodes in a row, and I was like bleary eyed. But wow, that was great. But then it comes to Netflix, and
Yeah.
Netflix runs 24, and you can binge an entire season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And imagine that one, because for those who may be watching and don't know, Jerry was also a writer on several TV series.
Yeah, that too.
So Imagine then, Jerry, if seasons were just 10 episodes, 8 episodes when you're doing
Oh,
diagnosis murder
it
and
would
stuff.
be, yeah, that would be awful for writers in particular, and actors to a lesser degree. Um, you can't live on the pay of a 10 episodes season.
Oh,
You certainly can't. I mean, they would hire writers on staff, and that pay uh, is less than would get paid for a single episode uh, on a non-staff prison show.
Really?
wow.
So yeah, so um, you're looking at a group of people who are worried about where they're going to be for 6 months or 8 months or 9 months, whatever the season between seasons is for some of these shows. And it's been brutal for these younger writers. Um, Older writers create shows and they become the showrunners of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's how they secure their income.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, one thing I miss is an
anyway,
actual, season of TV, a few months off for summer break, and then the season comes back. Now, not
yeah,
only is your season shorter, but you have to wait 3 years until the next season. I'm like, what
I
the
know.
heck?
Yeah, and you've by that point you've lost your staff writers. You may have to recast one of the characters.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I know that in occasion um, they were the studios were locking in writers to first option
Hmm.
uh, so that they had to come back.
Wow.
So they couldn't take jobs.
Yeah.
Uh, they, you know, I mean, who's going to hire somebody that they might lose
Hmm.
um, halfway through their 10 episode season?
Yeah.
It's don't get me started. You got me started. I loved working
Well,
on Father Dowling.
it's going back to that. That's I didn't even know that I was watching Gerry Conway written stuff when my mom loved that show because she loved Tom
Oh
Bosley
yeah,
from Happy Days. So,
right. Everybody's mom loves the shows that I was right for. Matlock, uh,
oh, were you
Father
on Matlock
Dowling.
also?
I wrote episodes of Matlock.
Okay, my
Um,
mom loved that.
I Yes, and Diagnosis Murder. I
Yep,
mean
she loved Dick
that's
Van Dyke.
got me stuck on that show too. I was pigeonholed as a writer of episodic mystery, um, and fortunately, I wrote a few episodes of. Uh, I was doing a show for Dick Wolf called Players, which I had been advised for, to come on as a writer by a guy who was also working for Dick Wolf as a
Wow.
supervisor. Um, and he was nice enough to advise me. So I was on this show, Players. And when that was canceled, uh, I wrote 3 episodes of Law and Order for a guy
Wow.
that I had met on Players.
Okay.
And so from there, when that writer became the executive producer, showrunner of Law and Order Criminal Intent, he asked me to come work on that show. And with the
Wow.
second season, I became a consulting producer, then a supervising producer, then a co-executive producer, etc.
Wow.
Um, it really is who you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
How
yeah,
many
it's
seasons were you on Criminal Intent, Jerry?
I think it was 5.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think yeah, it was after Vince came back. Uh, or
Man,
was
we
it?
could do an episode on
Because
that
it
at all.
seems like there was
That
always some Law and Order on TV at some point,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there always was. Dick Wolf has made so much money off of those shows. It's obscene. It's really obscene. Um,
I hope he gave you some of it.
but no, we did not get a piece. But it was really enlightening. It was a great job. I had seasons where I wrote 3 episodes a season, which was all I was expected to do, which means
Wow.
that out of a 26 episode year, 24 episode year, uh, I was only really working 18 weeks.
Wow.
So we went through production for 10 weeks, and I was in production for about 8 weeks. It was less than that. It's got to be less than
Yeah.
that. We had 2 weeks of prep, and 2 weeks of writing. So it's 4 weeks, and I wasn't on set for the shooting, and I wasn't in the editing room for the editing. So 4 weeks for me per episode that I wrote, which would mean 12 weeks in total. And we'd start in June with our prepping for the year, and we'd end in April of the following year. So
Cool.
it was, it was a 10. I can't do math anymore. So bear with me.
It's surprised that you say you were pigeonholed. Did they not know your experience writing action stories and sci-fi stories and stuff like that?
That actually was irrelevant. I was pigeonholed as a mystery writer because of Father Dowling. And I interviewed for Lois and Clark, and my background in comics actually worked against me. The
What?
executive producer didn't really want anybody who knew comics on her show
Oh my
because
God.
she didn't want anybody bringing up comics. What she wanted to be completely independent of it. So that worked against me, and I think the same thing happened with Birds of Prey, where I was up for it, and then they didn't want a comic book person on that show.
And that's
So
why it didn't last.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's very strange. I mean, all the films that Roy and I wrote together were all action fantasy films. We had credit on 2 of them. We wrote 8. There were samples of our writing that would have shown, at the very least, working together, we were fantasy oriented. Didn't matter. He wrote that Father Dowling stuff.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That is literally how I got my job on Under Suspicion, which was another 1-season show. I met a network exec, or no, a studio exec on Father Dowling, who then recommended me to Under Suspicion. So
Okay. Yeah.
there
Like you
you
said,
go.
who you
And then
know, right?
on Under Suspicion, I met the guy who recommended me for Players. From Players, it all connects. It's like that board on the world
The red strings
of a
everywhere.
conspiracy. Yeah, the conspiracy theorists.
Yeah. So I've
So I
heard
had
all the different. I'm sorry, Ray.
that's
I
right.
was just going to ask, where in the timeline was your TV writing? Like, had you? I guess this was what year in mid '80s?
I started at I started selling in the 1988 season, but it was actually near the end of that season. And
Okay.
then I was hired for the '89 season of Father Dowland.
Okay, because I was trying to
Um,
place it into
s-
like, okay, what comic work
I was
were you
still
had just
working on
left or?
comics.
Okay.
Yeah, I was working on some comics that Jim Salicrup was producing that actually Kirby had introduced the concepts for. Um, you know, you, they were an independent comic that didn't really match
Mhm.
up to his best work. But I wrote some issues of that, and then I told Jim I can't keep it on because I'm working in the TV business now.
Yeah.
Um,
The question was, have you had the opportunity with everybody knows the photos have been out. Uh Punisher's been on the set of Spider-Man, the new movie. Have you had the opportunity to meet, Tom Holland or John Bernthal at all?
no, no, I would have to ask.
Oh,
First of all, if I could, and I would have to ask Sony because they do the on-set production, uh, which is managed by Kevin
Feige.
Feige,
Hmm.
Feige, um, and that's too complicated. That's too complicated. I don't want to get into that. Um, but if they invite me, that would be great.
Yeah.
I'll put it out there on the podcast. I'm available. Um, so,
And, and before we wind down, Jerry, I just want, where can people keep up with you? I know you were on social media for a while. Are you still?
I am a little bit
Okay.
on social media. You can find me on Blue Sky,
Okay.
and a little bit on Instagram. I don't really post much on either of them, and I try not to be political on them. So
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons I don't post a lot. Uh,
And I met
because
you
my
at
life.
Heroes. I met you at Heroes Con earlier this year. Are you doing any
Oh
conventions
yeah.
coming up people should know about?
Yes, I'm going to be at the Scottsdale convention in Scottsdale, Arizona in November. Uh, I'm going to be at the Brazil convention
No.
wow.
in San uh, Paulo, or Rio de Janeiro. Where is it? I don't know. It's somewhere in Brazil. They'll tell me when I get there, which is usually my attitude on these things. Um, and that's going to be in early December.
Okay.
And I have a booking for another convention in April,
Okay.
which hasn't been firmed up yet, or is firmed up, and I don't know about it. Uh, like I said, if it isn't in my calendar on my date book, I
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
So
before
I'm
Ray,
hoping
So
that
one
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, Jerry,
uh,
before Ray wraps up, I just wanted to say I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and both of your eras from, Death of Gwen Stacy and introducing the Punisher to when you came back on Web and Spectacular. I love both of those. And thank you so much for everything that you've put out into the world, sir.
thank you for thanking me.
one last question. It was brought up that we're going to be getting because you technically wrote the first crossover between Superman and Spider-Man.
Yes,
So 2026.
technically, I in fact,
Yes,
I,
you in fact wrote this. Now we're going to be getting supposedly we are getting DC's going to have theirs. They're going to do their Spider-Man and Superman crossover, and Marvel's going to do theirs. They're speculating Jim Lee's going to be doing art, and then Dan Mora. So, have they approached you to possibly write a couple of pages for it, or anything like that?
I,
Or can you say?
I could say if I wanted to. I think they did approach me. I wasn't sure for what, but I'm no good at writing long pieces anymore. So I turned them down gratefully. If that was what it was for, great. I'm a big booster of crossovers. I think they're wonderful. I think Jim Lee would be awesome to do the crossover with Dan Slott as the writer.
Oh,
That would be just great. He's a big fan. Dan is a big fan of Superman and
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, obviously.
Yeah.
And Jim Lee, has really deep relationships with DC, but I don't. Yeah, and he has good, deep relationships with Marvel. He did the Wolverine series, right?
Yeah.
If I remember.
Yeah.
So he's the right choice, and I think it would be awesome, for that team up.
Oh man,
So
that would be awesome. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
whatever.
Yeah, Dan Slott and Jim Lee. Oh man.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Put that out there. Put it on social media.
Yes, you heard it. We got to get this team up together, and of course, they'll still need another team up as well. But we want to thank you again for coming on, for taking the time and talk with us geeks here, and us thanking you for what you have done.
It was my pleasure, guys. I truly mean that. I'm grateful.
Thank you so much, Gerry.
All right.
Okay. Thank you too.
Peace, guys.
Bye-bye.